Well, here we are, folks. If you're listening, then I must be on the radio. This is the Andy Alberti Show, and we're coming to you live from Pahrump, Nevada, the last free American town. And believe me, you see what's going on in the country today? This is going to be the country's last stand, in my opinion. And why would I say that? Because this town is loaded up with all sorts of things about being aggressive about how their government is run, about how we all feel about things. I mean, it's really interesting. And I want to get right into that. And before we start, I want to talk about the men's breakfast every Thursday morning. This is a breakfast that has gone on since the year 2007. Now, I started that at that time, along with Bernie Cusimano. And over a couple of years, it built from, actually, it wasn't called the men's breakfast in the beginning. It was just something we did to get people interested in what we would talk about on our TV show. At that time, we were doing a talk show on Channel 30 here at Pahrump, which doesn't exist anymore, but the owners passed away and things kind of fell apart. So this has gone on for a long period of time. After 2.5 years of doing the breakfast and building it up from scratch, I turned it over to Bernie, and he ran it for a number of years. And then we went through a succession of several people. And then I was asked to come back and do another breakfast. So that's what we do now. And we try to have interesting topics. We've invited the county treasurer, the county auditor, who I haven't yet to do, but it's coming. With the county public administrator, who takes care of dead people's assets when they have no one there. We've had the county guardian, who takes charge of you when you're not capable of taking charge of yourself anymore. And we've had the sheriff, we've had the district attorney's staff. We've tried to bring interesting people in. Now, here's the thing. You know, if you go to a public meeting, they have a thing called public comment. It's not public public debate, and it isn't a little dialogue between you and whoever's sitting at the podium, the dais, during the meeting. It's a time for you to inform them about whatever you want to talk about. I would imagine if you wanted to have 3 minutes of silence, you could probably do that. But that's kind of what that's about. So the breakfast is different. We invite people to come in and talk with us about various issues that we're all interested in. As a matter of fact, some maybe that they didn't realize they should be interested in. Like when we invited the public guardian, that there was a lot of fear about how that division works in the county. And we still have some questions. So eventually we'll probably invite Corinne Smith back for some more discussion. But we want to understand how our elected officials are dealing with our issues. Now, I did hear something this morning that kind of took me back. We have complained for several years about the fact that one of the commissioners from up north was Lorinda Wickman, had voted for her husband to be on the water board. And actually, he ran the water board. We had complained about that because she voted on it, and that was, we think, a violation of state law. Well, I heard this morning that the commissioners voted to fire everybody on that water board. Now, I don't know if that's all the details, but certainly by this time next week when I do a show, I'll have a lot more to tell you about that. So this morning at breakfast, we discussed some of the things that we saw yesterday when Dwight Hunter and I went to the local school board meeting. Now, you know, if you've been watching school board meetings on television, not here in Nye County necessarily, but in other parts of the country, you've seen quite a bit of disruption going on, and it's not been pretty. So we thought we would go take a look here in Nye County. And I have to say, it was one of the tamest meetings I've ever been to. There was a gentleman, a black man, who got up first to speak at public comment. And here's one of the things. If you go to a commission meeting in Pahrump, you can only speak for 3 minutes, and nobody can interrupt you. You have 3 full minutes to make your statement. And then you can turn in your statement to the clerk, if it's in writing, and request that it be included in the minutes. Now, when we went to the school board meeting, they informed me that it may not be as I wrote it. And I informed the secretary at the school board that I do not believe the law gives them the opportunity to make any modifications to my written statement. We're going to see how that works out at the next meeting. But I intend to pursue that because I do believe that they do not have the power to change my words or to consolidate it and do anything other than what is written on that paper. So anyway, after I think his name was Ethan, got on the podium to speak, boy, was he well spoken. You know, we tend to think that this is podunk. We called it Pahrump because it's podunk. No. We have some really well-educated, very good spokespeople here in Pahrump. And he happened to be one of them. I intend to meet this man personally and get to know him better. I really liked what he had to say. For the most part, nobody's perfect. I may have missed something, that could happen. And then I went up to the podium and I read my statement, which I had given to the secretary earlier to be included in the minutes. And what I was doing was inviting anyone from the school district that they want to send to our breakfast to have a chat with us so we could have a question and answer period, a dialogue. I mean, even the sheriff comes to our breakfast. Normally she doesn't tell. We don't have to invite her. She just walks in the door. But that's the way it is. And it's I think, a well-oiled, well-organized meeting that has no pomposity to it. It's just, if you want to say something, you put up your hand, and if it's got one finger raised, that one finger says you want to talk on the topic on hand that's on the floor. And if you want to change the topic, you can put up 2 fingers. But 2 fingers has to wait because 1 finger takes priority. And the other issue with 1 finger up, let's say there's 3 fingers that are up in the air from different people, 1 finger each. And one of those 3 people hasn't spoken on the topic yet, that person is next. And I'm supposed to be the one to make sure that happens. That doesn't always work out the way I plan, but they sure let me know. So, and I appreciate their input. So anyway, yesterday at the school board meeting, there was something that took place that really kind of caught my attention. Well, 2 things. One of them was a woman from Pahrump who, and I don't have her name for sure, so until I have it for sure, I don't want to mention it because I don't want to call somebody out who's not there. But she had the budget. And she was looking at how the money is being spent in the Nye County School District. And she talked a bit about that. So I invited her out into the entryway to have a little conversation to find out more about her. But she was well spoken also. All right, both of these people are better spoken than I was, but too bad for me. So it turns out she's a retired Air Force Army veteran. She is a woman living in Pahrump, And the interesting thing was she's not afraid to speak her mind. And she should. As should we all speak our mind. And I do remember her telling me that she was at the Clark County School Board meeting this past week when Jara, the superintendent, was fired. Let's not use that word. Let's just be kind and say his contract was canceled. That's a firing. So she was telling me that she had been there and that she was glad to see it happen. And then she mentioned to me that she had gotten a citation from the school police, or what she believes to be the school police. I wasn't there. And
there's no school police here.
This was in Clark County. And so I asked her, I said, well, if they ordered the school police to give you a citation or whatever they wanted them to do, did they actually hire the police force, or is that part of the Clark County? And she responded with, she said, I don't know. But the citation they gave me was a Clark County citation, not a school district citation. So I don't know how all that works. We're going to be investigating that a bit more, because how many kinds of police do we have? There's the IRS police. There's the police who look after the police. I mean, there's all kinds of different law enforcement entities, some of which can't touch the U.S. citizens. Like the CIA, they're not supposed to do anything within the country. And the FBI. And I can hear the audience in the background listening, chuckling over the fact that the CIA can't do anything with the U.S. citizens. But they gave them an excuse to do it. So, yes, they can. And it was Utah that built the facility. Now, I liked my friends in Utah, and I can understand them wanting the money. What I can't understand is why they let them do that in their state. Their state, like Nevada, does not have much of the government land that was supposed to be given to them when the state was created. Anyway, I don't want to belabor that too much, but that's kind of the story. The other thing that happened at the school board meeting was the third item before the end of the meeting. The superintendent was training the school board members as how they should conduct themselves, what their responsibilities and duties are. Now, you know, folks, if you're going to run for an office and you want to represent your constituents, the superintendent doesn't have to tell you how to do your job. He's the friggin' employee. I don't have any issue with the superintendent helping the guys to understand what their responsibilities are, but not at a public meeting. What that tells me is that he thinks they're not doing their job properly. And I'm curious about what it is he's thinking. Why did he do it? Anyway, at that point, we decided, well, maybe we're not going to stick around and watch them be embarrassed by having him give them a survey to fill out about what they think their job is and how to do it. But there was one other thing that caught my attention, and Dwight's as well, and that was executive session. The next to last item on the agenda was for the school board to close out the meeting to the public to discuss whatever they're going to discuss. Now, that closed meeting is secret. And we don't know what's said in that secret meeting. Now, they're not the only ones that do secret meetings. I'll get to that in a minute. The disturbing thing about it is that you don't know, is it going to be 5 minutes or is it going to be an hour? And then when they come out of the secret meeting, then they vote on whatever they want to do based on what they discussed in the secret meeting. But by that time, there's usually nobody there anyway. I mean, the only people there may have been staff. Mr. Ritchie, who's the man who handles the finances and all. Yeah, they're the only ones that are there. So we don't get to know, we don't get to see them in action. Now, some people could be at home and watch the meeting on Zoom or Granicus, whichever it's on. But to me, this is wrong. If they need to have a special meeting to discuss personnel matters or other issues, there's nothing in the law, to the best of my knowledge, that says they can't schedule a meeting for executive session prior to the regular meeting. And if that's not the case, then they could just schedule the first item on the agenda to be the executive session so they can get that out of the way while people are still in the audience. I can tell you there have been many times when the county commissioners, right in the middle of their meeting, will go into an executive session to discuss personnel matters or negotiations with the union, contracts, things that are kept away from the public. Although why negotiations over union contracts, which is how they're going to spend our money, why that should be secret to us is beyond me. I'd like to know what they're talking about in there. And by the way, just when I tell you I'd like to know, I was a twice elected school board member in New York in my younger days. I was in some of those meetings. I'd like to see that happen here. State law to protect the union interests bars us as the public from observing that kind of meeting. Is that the only secret thing going on around here? Hell no. But it's disturbing. When you see the things come out in these union contracts that we can do nothing about because our representative government is dealing with it on our behalf, that's a bad situation. And I think we need to do something to correct it. I don't know what. I'm only one person with one voice on the radio. But to me, there's a bit of deception on what goes on behind the scenes there when it comes to this issue. And it's not just commissioners, and it's not just school boards. When they fired everybody that is, as I understand it, and I probably should have verified it by going on to look at Granicus at that particular part of the meeting. But I've gotten it from a good source, so I'm willing to rely on my sources. So there you are. That's what took place this morning. In addition to one other thing, there's a lawsuit being formulated here in Nye County. It's not a lawsuit to affect just Nye County. It's a lawsuit that, in my opinion, could affect the entire country. I can't discuss much about it right now, but if you have any background experience in doing research, or you know where certain things might be buried that might help in a lawsuit, I'd like to hear from you. And you can send me an email, andy@andyalberti.com. That's a tough one to remember, especially if you know the show host. And I check that mail periodically, so we can take a look and see. If you've never been to a school board meeting, I think now is the time to go, because next year is election time. And don't be surprised, there will be 2 more board members, if I read it right, up for election next year. Well, could be 3. I'd have to go back and double check. But whatever it is, we need to have good candidates who are interested in the benefit of the child's election, of the child's education. I know I'm an old guy. I went to school. In Catholic school, my first 4 years, St. Adalbert's Elementary School in Queens, New York. St. Adalbert's is still there, by the way. I never knew there was a St. Adalbert's. Even though I went to the school, it dawned on me when I got older. But I had they were teaching you how to write in script and do math and that sort of thing and how to read. I used to love reading. I still do. I used to go to the library, the Queens Public Library, by myself as a young boy, 2 miles away, and I would come back with 5 or 6 books I wanted to read. Sometimes I couldn't get past the title because I didn't have enough time. I had to bring the books back. But I was interested in the books and what was in them, because to me, that was where you learn. And when education comes in, I don't care how hard a teacher works, a teacher presents the information. It's the students who have control over their own interests that cause true education and learning. And when a student has to learn something that they're not interested in, that's a tough road to hoe. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have some money and you find out that the amount of money you have, let's say you have $100 as a young person, and you find out that every year that $100 bill in your pocket buys less and less. How would you know that if you don't learn it somewhere? And most people, even as adults, really don't learn that lesson. I got to do a show on money one of these days. I probably should bring in a banker. Wouldn't that be fun? We have a banker come in and we talk about money. I've asked my banker about fiat money, and they said, "What's that?" I knew at that point, I knew I'm in trouble. So is the country. Okay, so going past the school board meeting here, on Saturday, on Fridays at, I think it's 4 o'clock, Mr. Producer, is that right? Frank? Is Blue Baker on at 4 o'clock on Friday?
4:30.
He's on at, okay. So Blue Baker is on at 4:30 on Friday, and his show is called Combat Correspondence 369. Lou's not a stranger to being on the radio, so I think you'll enjoy what he has to say. He's a pretty sharp guy. By the way, this breakfast that I talk about is one of the Romeo clubs. And for your information, Romeo stands for, it's an acronym. God, I always, when I was young, I always wondered what the hell is an acronym? It's the first letter of every word in the description. So Romeo Club stand for Retired Old Men Eating Out. Now, I never called the breakfast that. I always called it the men's breakfast, because it was all about what the men thought, because the women never showed up. We had some women once in a while say to us, "What do you guys talk about? You meet every week. We want to know." So we never said women couldn't come. And actually one of them did, early in the game. And when she left, we never saw her again. We were nice to her, we were courteous, but she just wanted to see what we did. It was okay. But today I opened it up. Not today, but in the last several years. I've opened it up and we invite everybody. Men, women, we've had some children occasionally, Democrats, Republicans, the Green Party. This is all about what can we do to make our lives better without hurting other people. And that's what it's about. So you're all invited. It's $5 to come to the meeting. It helps to pay the expenses at the museum when we meet. And, I got to have the lights on and the air conditioning. So you got to pay for that. But it's every week, every Thursday morning at 7:30. When you come, you're expected to sign in, pay your $5, and I guarantee you when you leave, You'll be more knowledgeable than when you got there. And it'll be kind of fun. It's interesting. And you'll find out who knows things in town, who's learning, but everybody can contribute. So there was an article in the paper. I wanted to get to this because it has to do about deception. And, people say, who do you trust? Well, first off, I trust me. I know what I do, but do I know what everybody else does? I can suspect it, but I'd have to prove it. And I can't be everywhere at once. Supposedly, only God is omniscient. The rest of us, we have to see it to believe it. And even then, our lying eyes, we might not trust. Anyway, this was a letter written by Kimball Shinkowski. And it was in the Las Vegas Sun. Now, Las Vegas Sun is a liberal rag. I call it that because they had to join the Las Vegas Review Journal because they couldn't get enough subscriptions to their newspaper. It was that bad. So the Las Vegas Journal, in order to have open dialogue, made a contract that they would carry their newspaper, which is about 4 to 6 pages on average. But I do find some things in there that are interesting. And this thing by Kimball Shinkowski out of Woodcross, Utah, they can't even get somebody in Nevada to write something. Anyway, here's what Kimball had to say. Early in the pandemic, health authorities pointedly told Americans not to wear masks. Some even said masks wouldn't help. The reason why? Federal and state governments, corporate America, and by the way, corporate America is going to be an issue. We'll be talking about that in another show. And the public health system were not prepared for the pandemic. No one had made and stored masks that were required. So they came on and said you didn't need a mask. They didn't believe in it, but if you want to wear it, go ahead. The authorities, those people we look to protect us, were concealing the truth using a tactic called dissembling, neglecting to mention an important detail, and covering their behinds and treating the American electorate like children who are not capable of understanding grown-up people talk. They have to hide the truth from us. They can know the truth, but we should never see it because we can't handle the truth. I think they made a whole movie out of that one statement. The nation's elders sowed the seeds of the mask resistance that later took such a heavy death toll on the country. Now, here's the part I really liked. This incident in our national history teaches us two things. First, our leaders and leading institutions are more concerned about their careers and their bank accounts than about the safety and health of Americans. If they were not, they would not feel the need to cover up their misdeeds. Second, we need, and he's saying we, I presume he means everybody instead of just the royal we. We need to promote public-spirited people to leadership positions in industry and government rather than private-spirited ones, those who have their own self-interest at heart. Now, how do we know that they have their own self-interest at heart? The number one key indicator is their career. If they want a career in politics, it's their interest, not yours. I do not believe there should be retirement money for anybody serving as an elected official. They might get a good income while they're elected, but I do not believe elected officials think they should have a career and then get generous bonuses and retirement money from the public treasury. And with that, I can tell you that there were people in Nye County pulling in $4,000 a month on retirement pay who were either elected officials or government employees. Now, $4,000 a month when you don't have to go to work is a healthy piece of change. And now there may some problems. There may definitely be some problems with the retirement fund because that was based on a higher interest rate for income than exists today. Somebody may have to make up that money. I don't know who that is, but certainly it won't be the career politicians that this article referenced. And by the way, if anybody can find Kimball Shinkowski, I wouldn't mind having him on or her on the show. It'd be an interesting conversation. And this article came from Woods Cross, Utah. So if you live in Woods Cross, Utah, or you don't even know where it is, I have no clue. Never seen that place before in Utah. But if you know where that is and you know this person, maybe we can talk them into coming on the show. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you what, I have a large staff that helps me put my shows together. I'll see if they can track this person down. There isn't any reason I shouldn't do that. So let's talk a little about how career politicians work, because in this letter, they're referencing what to look for. Well, here's one thing you can look for. This is a recent article in the Las Vegas Review-Journal. I get the paper every morning, so instead of watching television, which takes forever to get news out of those people because they're all commenting, I want to read the words. And this article was written by Bill Denser of the Review-Journal Capital Bureau. That sounds like an impressive title to me. And he comments on, Nevada wanted to have a fee to cover upgrades in the DMV's technology. So according to this article by Bill, Nevada motorists were looking to recoup a wrongfully assessed $1 per transaction surcharge at the state DMV, and they challenged it in court. And the bottom line was the state Supreme Court looked at this issue and said that this $1 fee was supposed to run out, but they reinstituted it. And so now the money has to be refunded to you if you paid that dollar transaction fee. The question is, how are they going to get it back to you? And they had some debate. And this lawsuit actually challenged legislation that the Democrats had pushed through at the end of a session to extend the DMV fee, along with a tax on business. So now there are 68,000 business customers that represent of all the fees to be refunded. So that's close to 100,000 fees. That's $100,000. They're saying it would cost that much just to return the money, let alone refunding the money. So here's their solution. You have to show up at your local DMV office with your receipt to show you paid the dollar. I guarantee you, if there was a tax you had to pay in Nevada, that they would find you to make sure you paid it. So why does government get a free pass? Who's responsible for creating this debacle to begin with? This is a question. These things need to be looked at and to be asked. And I can promise you this, I don't think that Republicans, let me rephrase that, because there were some Republicans who were not conservative. There were some conservatives that did not vote to do this, to collect that dollar fee. But if you go back and you have your receipts, IRS says you should save your receipts. And if you have a business with a fleet of vehicles, you started paying more and more. So if you have your receipts, you can go down to the DMV and get your money back for $1. I'm betting most people are going to say, as the politicians, your representatives are betting, ain't nobody going to do that. It's only $1. Let them keep it. I say no. It's not only $1. It's a lesson learned, and you have to punish the perpetrators. At the end of my show on Facebook and YouTube, my closing statement is, you need to know the names of the perpetrators. And that goes for this as well. There are no excuses. Government has to be responsible. It doesn't get to be there for itself. Let's take the case of the Las Vegas School Board. Jara has been fired, but he's still on the job. I got to tell you, if you work in private industry and you got fired, they take you and walk you out the door and tell you somebody will empty your desk into a box and bring it out to you. But not in Clark County, because this is the school district. We don't want anybody to feel bad. So he can stay on the job till the end of December. I'm sorry. No. Fired is fired. Done is done. You know, if you stay in I'm probably one of the few people in industry that got to stay his 2 weeks when he gave notice he was leaving. I decided I was leaving. Even at that, in many cases, many people were escorted out once they announced it. But I was invited to stay. They wanted to give me a different position in the company. But I already committed to go someplace else. I'd have been happy if they said, well, don't come back yet. But I got to work and continue to help the company make money. Matter of fact, when I left that company, I heard there was a company in, it wasn't Brea, it was, it was in North Orange County, South LA, and they made aluminum wheels. I had worked on developing a hydraulic system for these guys, and when I left, I had the first order for the first machine. But I heard from the woman who was the secretary at the company I worked for, Judy Balch was her name. And then there was Angel Beckman. She was another one. And they told me, they said, that's the biggest order that they ever had for hydraulic systems in the company. But I left before it was finished. You got to go. So should somebody go to jail for passing a law that didn't hold muster? You know, I listened to Joe Biden, and he said that he was going to do something that he knew was outside the bounds of the Constitution. But he was going to do it anyway and let them sort it out in the courts. Now, if that's how we're going to run the country, then I want a new president. And I don't want Kamala Harris either. Ha ha ha. If she laughs one more time on television, I'm going to cut my wrists. Maybe her laughter will do it for me. So that dollar fee has stuck in my craw. And I got to tell you something else that's going on. I was a real estate broker in Nevada and California. And I was a broker in Nevada here in Pahrump since I moved here. Before I moved here, I was living in Vegas. And the real estate people in Pahrump always complained we didn't have a local real estate, a local board. And I knew that because I was a realtor for a while out of Las Vegas. And to me, when you're 50, 60 miles away, that's not local. And so I took a listing and I said in the listing paperwork that I would put it on the local MLS. But Las Vegas is not local. We're in a totally different county. But I had a complaint filed. So I was not a realtor at that point. I was a real estate broker. And I should never have done this. I responded to it because I felt that, first off, the customer had no right to interfere with the way I marketed the property. And I used Zillow as the listing source. Hell, we were selling houses off of Zillow. Zillow was doing a good job. As a matter of fact, I have one of my customers, I'm looking at Realtor.com at the real estate listings that were in the Realtor database, And she found one on Zoom that was a better deal. I'm sorry, she found it on Zillow that was a better deal. And that's the one we sold. So I'm just telling you, you can't believe everything you hear and everything people tell you. So I went into this hearing and I argued that there's no way a non-realtor, just a broker who's not a realtor, can participate in their database. And my customer knew I was not a realtor. And I had explained to them why I wanted not to be a realtor. And when I went into this hearing, the first question I asked the board that was sitting there to judge my actions, if any of them were not a realtor. It was comprised of everyone who was a realtor. And their explanation was, it didn't matter. They considered Pahrump to be part of their local board. But I can tell you the agents out here did not consider that. And even today, there's more activity taking place out here, but they're still part of Las Vegas. And it's called Las Vegas Association of Realtors. It's not called the Las Vegas Nye County Association of Realtors or the Nye County Association of Realtors. And the commissioners knew something about this, about how to name an entity, because they created an entity called Eden. It was spelled E-D-E-N, and it stood for Esmeralda and Nye County's Economic Development. Well, actually, Economic Development for Nevada, for Nye and Esmeralda counties. So they knew they should name it so that people knew how diverse it was. As it turned out, it was a piece of crap. Never accomplished anything. Made commissioners feel good or look like they were really doing something, but they were not. Well, okay, I don't want to get into any more of that. I'm a little bit disgusted with what I see going on these days. I really feel that we're not being paid true diligence by our officials. There's another little tidbit. Merrick Garland, who's the Attorney General, he directed authorities to hold strategy sessions with law enforcement to address the increasing threats targeting school board members, teachers, and other employees in the nation's public schools. Now, is that a job for the FBI and other authorities nationally to look at that? I can assure you what you see going on in school districts at their school board meetings is not because the people are violent. It's because they're damn angry at what they see going on. And they're unhappy with what's being taught in the schools. And they want the school districts to perform. Now I have to tell you, Nye County will tell you that they're at the bottom rung of education quality. Clark County will say they're at the bottom rung. And in New York City, they say they're at the bottom rung. How many people can be at the bottom rung? How many districts can say we're the worst? I can tell you that there was a study done in 2011 which put Nevada in general at the bottom of the list. Number 50 out of 50 school districts. And the argument is we don't spend enough money. Now, as a past school board member, I'm going to tell you, it ain't about the money. Teachers are being paid an adequate amount of money. They work roughly 9 months out of the year, and they get paid for that time. But they don't get paid. This is dangerous ground here. They don't get paid for the time when they're off during the summer. But they can receive a check based on a 12-month period for their 9-month stipend, which means that if they get paid every month for 9 months, the check will be bigger. But if they take it over a year, the check they get every month is smaller per month, but it's the same amount of money. So I asked a couple of teachers. Now, I've been around the horn a couple of times with education, and I've asked a few teachers, and they tell me, well, they really need more money. My question is, well, if you work more hours, you get more money. And teachers get paid, there's a scale, depending on how far along you go in improving your educational credits, you can make more money. When I was on the school board, I looked at that and I thought to myself, wait a minute, I'm only concerned about one thing, a concept called value added. Now, in the industry, when you work in industry, when they talk about value added, it has to do with taking a product. Like, let's say you take dirt and you dig out of that dirt, you dig a product that goes into a furnace and you melt out the iron that's in that dirt. That's just an example, but it's one of many. That's how you start adding value. The dirt wasn't worth very much, but once you smelted out the iron had a higher value than the dirt, and now you can make a bit of money in profits. So if somebody needs that iron to build, to further change it, and they have a thing in the steel industry where they make ingots and they have what they call rolling mills. Well, if you ever want to see something in action, you want to watch a rolling mill work. They take a slab of steel and they keep running it through these heavy duty rollers. It goes in orange, comes out yellow as it goes through the roller. All the force of energy being put back into that metal. And then they spray it with water. And then so anyway, by the time they're done with that, it's worth more. It has more value. Then they'll put it through another process where it comes out as a sheet metal. And you'll see these rolls of sheet metal stacked up at the factories. And then another company will take that, and they'll take that sheet metal and they'll run it through other machines that will either stamp parts out, or they'll have laser machines that cut certain patterns into that sheet metal. And then they make things. Every vacuum cleaner, every spoon, every fork, everything in this studio was manufactured by somebody. The clothes you wear, the buttons on your shirt, even though it's a little button, somebody's making that. And the sound that goes out of the airwaves from this radio station, a whole bunch of people had to make things like the tower, the cables to hold the tower, the cement, the bolts, the nuts, the antenna, the transmitter, the speakers, the microphones, you name it, the timer. There's so many things that manufacturing does that it's important to know this, because we here in Nye County don't manufacture hardly anything. And if you say that to a commissioner, they'll tell you, oh, but we're building a doghouse. It's only going to cost us a little over $4 million. And with the inflation we're seeing and the price of wood and everything else it takes to go build a house, that $4 million ain't going to hold up, folks. So who do you trust? Do you trust the government entity that tells you that they need to build a much larger facility? I heard that there were too many offices in the facility and they reduced the amount of offices to make room for animals. But I wonder if that was a change order in the plans. You know, when bidders make a bid, they bid to the plans that exist. And every time there's a change required by the customer, there's a fee for that. I just wonder how many fees we're going to see before they're done with this thing. And I often wondered, what are the alternatives to building a new facility rather than expanding the old one? This is a serious issue, folks, because every time you turn around, they want more money for something. Now, when they ask you for more money, they never say to you, we did a study and here is exactly where that money will be spent and what it will cost. Oh, no, no. They say we need to improve education, so we pass a bill and it'll bring another $1 billion into the state of Nevada for education. But did they say to you what they would use the $1 billion for? Was it going to make students smarter? I say take a few minutes of your time and go to a website called Transparent Nevada. TransparentNevada.com. Now, when you go on that website, here's what you're going to see. You're going to see that you can go on their database and you can see how much money in salary and benefits everybody makes. I'm talking everybody, even the retirees who are getting PERS money. PERS stands for, those who don't know, the Public Employee Retirement System. It's all there, folks. And sometimes you'll see somebody that's double dipped or maybe even triple dipped. I understand there's one of those coming up in the coming elections. We'll see. And if that's the case, you should never vote for a career politician. Ever, ever, ever. Don't tell me they do good things. Even the ones that tell you they do good things, that's their public persona. And you'll never know what goes on behind the scenes. And there have been reports, actual cases in the newspaper of good, supposedly good public officials getting caught in the act. The most recent one was the governor of New York State. Can you imagine? He quit. He had to. Woke has awakened his lack of veracity. And for those who question the word veracity, it comes from the Latin veritas. And when I went to school, I had to take 3 years of Latin. That's how I know that. Don't ask me to talk Latin. It's a dead language. But we still use it. A lot of variations in the Latin language we still use. So don't trust all these public officials. Challenge them at every turn. And ask for the names of who they're talking about. If it's true and they get sued, they will prevail and they'll make money. Now, can we make it easier for public officials to be honest? Geez, I don't think so. I just don't think it's possible. The easiest thing for us to do as the public is to put an end to career politicians. Put an end to them giving themselves raises. Put an end to them getting retirement money. I always like, when they do an audit, the same company audits Valley Electric and Nye County every year for 2 years whenever they do their audits. Now, I'm not going to say that the auditing company that does this all the time, by the way, Ray Ritchie, who works at the school district and is the treasurer, was an employee of the auditing company. This goes back a few years, but I have it on good faith. I have it for the guy who owned the company. And if they're in there more than 4 years, then they get to be in the government retirement system. When Angela Bello was here, she had 4 years and was shy of 2 weeks of being eligible for retirement money out of PERS. In my understanding, as I recall, she was given an extra 2 weeks worth of service so that she could take advantage of that retirement. I think if everybody's going to have to retire and they want all of us to be in the retirement program of Social Security, let's put everybody on it. Let's make it everybody. The guys that own Facebook, when they retire on Social Security. Not that he needs it. I just think we can make it a lot easier for public officials to be honest, because they know they don't really have a career, that they have been elected to do the best job possible for us, the public, that they're there to represent. Then let's make it that way. And let's tell them you got one. By the way, do you notice that elected officials are now talking about having their close relatives, husbands and wives, running for office along with them? Mitch McConnell had his wife as the Secretary of Transportation. And when she had an ethics complaint against her, it must have been a damn good one, because she retired over it. She quit her job and retired. And because she retired, according to newspaper reports, the ethics complaint went away. Now, my ethics complaint as a real estate broker, that didn't go away when I retired. And I had an issue with Provenza Neth Properties, with their agents interfering with my contract that I had with my customer. That's what created the whole problem. But did I go after them? It wasn't worth the effort. We can do this, folks. Elections are coming up next year. I already know some of the names that plan to run. Now, everybody plans to run, but until they actually sign on the dotted line, we don't know. Now, here's how it's going to work next year. And if there's an election for judges, judges have to file in the first 2 weeks of January. I don't know why that is. I've never had it explained to me, and I wish somebody could. And then the rest of us slobs, I'm going to just say I'm the slob. The rest of you guys are clean cut, honest, serving individuals. We get to file in March for a 2-week period. And after that, we have about a 2-week period where we can decide, you know what, maybe we really don't want to run. I'm sure this year there'll be some school board seats open in Pahrump, in Nye County. It is the Nye County School District, not the Pahrump School District. And as such, just as a side note, the main office for the school district is in Tonopah, where they have one school boarded up and closed because they don't have enough students for it. I don't know if they opened up the jail for students, but that's a whole new topic. And you always have to go back and look at the history. The history tells you what you got coming. And that's why you should never trust any elected official who wants a career. Now, with that, my email address is andy@andyalberti.com. If you would like to be attending our breakfast over Zoom, you can observe and just send me an email. Tell me you want to be on it. And the day of the breakfast, I will send out an email so you know. You can just copy and paste it into your web browser, and it'll come up automatically and you'll be there. So with that, it's been a fun afternoon. And now that the show is coming to a close, your host, Andy Alberti, is out of here.